My sister-in-law demanded me leave my own home during her baby shower. Am I the asshole for venting to her husband? For the last 3 years, I have been married. Although he has been living away from home for work, my spouse and I have been together for 5 years. He returns home every other weekend to spend time with us, and we're doing the long-distance thing. Shortly before he left, we purchased our own home a few months ago. It's convenient for me to see my parents and for them to visit me because it's a lovely location near their home. It's quite spacious and has beautiful architecture, which is perfect for me because I adore the feeling of living alone. I love living in this lovely home in a fantastic neighborhood. I got a lot of praise when I hosted my housewarming party. My sister-in-law, Carrie, was the one who seemed to like the place the best out of everyone. She was gushing about it non-stop. Although we are not close friends, Carrie and I have always gotten along well. I immediately said yes when she asked if she could have her baby shower at my house. I agreed for a few reasons, despite the fact that we are not close. I didn't want to say no to her because she is pregnant. I also thought it would be wonderful to meet new people and have a change of environment because I spend a lot of time alone. For the event, I even took a day off. Because I had such a lovely home and didn't want to spend a lot of money renting a location, she insisted on holding the baby shower at my house. Though smaller and less striking, her home was nonetheless pleasant. Her flattery must have been effective since I was unable to say no. Furthermore, she had always been kind to me, so I had no excuse to say no. I had no idea what was going to happen. She made no hint that I wouldn't be welcome during the planning phase. Everything involved me. For the past few weeks, she has come to see me virtually every day to go over the specifics, including the cuisine, decor, and catering. I was looking forward to the occasion and believed that this would strengthen our relationship. I assisted the decorators in setting up the venue on the day of the event. Carrie arrived about an hour before the guests were scheduled to arrive and thanked me for everything. She talked to me like a friend and behaved normally. But she asked me where I would want to spend the next couple of hours, 15 minutes before the guests were expected to arrive. I was surprised and assumed she was kidding. It was my house, after all, and I had expected to be there. I had purchased a gift for her and dressed appropriately. She genuinely responded that she wasn't joking when I inquired. She made a few seemingly good arguments that I hadn't thought of because I was too busy assisting her. Carrie informed me that I wasn't even on the guest list and hadn't gotten an invitation. To be honest, I was aware of that but didn't mind because I assumed I would be invited and included in the celebration. Ultimately, I had assisted in organizing it and was letting her use my home without requiring her to pay for a location. Given that Carrie and I didn't have a particularly strained relationship, I believe that anyone in my situation would have made the same assumption. Why in the world would I think I wouldn't be attending the event? She apologized for the mistake after I informed her just that. She said that because I'm a banker and not a party or event planner, she had assumed that I was assisting her in a professional capacity, which was absurd. Her presumption was absurd. She told me she didn't want to argue, so I guess my face was a reflection of how upset I was. She maintained that since she was pregnant, she didn't want to become stressed out, thus now wasn't the time for small-minded arguments. She then informed me that I had to leave because only her personal family and close friends were invited to the occasion. I regrettably didn't make the cut for what was meant to be a small, private event. Because she didn't want to start a commotion, she requested me to leave before the visitors arrived. This is when I was angry. I didn't know where else to go, so I stormed out of the room and headed to the backyard. I attempted to phone my husband to voice my displeasure with his sister's actions, but he was unable to do so due to work obligations. I decided to do something unconventional because I was frustrated and needed to vent. I called her husband Jim. Jim is a reserved, quiet individual. Although I haven't had much contact with him, he has been married to Carrie for 2 years and has been with her for 4. I went on a tirade about how disappointed and wounded I was as I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time after I was done. I told him that I felt unable to speak to Carrie directly without running the danger of offending a pregnant woman, and I apologized for venting to him. He might be able to talk her out of it, I hoped. Jim's apology on her behalf made me feel less anxious. That would be ridiculous, he said, so I really didn't need to leave my own home. He urged me to wait and promised to come over in a few minutes because he didn't want Carrie and I to get into a heated disagreement. Jim showed up before any of the visitors, as promised. I entered the house when the doorbell rang, and the 3 of us stood in the living room. When Carrie saw him, she was obviously shocked. Jim forcefully stepped in and assured me that there was no reason for me to leave and that I could attend the baby shower. When Carrie attempted to object, Jim gave her a stern look, so she remained silent. She continued to glare at me the rest of the time. I decided I was never going to talk to her again. I even thought about calling off the baby shower, but I decided against it. I didn't want all of the work I had put into organizing the event to go in vain. In addition, I didn't feel the need to cancel once Jim showed up, and I didn't have the heart to do so either. I made the decision to give the evening its due and to cut off any communication with Carrie after it ended. I couldn't say the same about her, but I remained dignified and graceful the entire time. Jim apologized to me once again for everything after the baby shower ended. But Carrie wouldn't even look at me. Jim also expressed regret about that, as I was getting needless hostility from her. It was annoying to see her think I didn't belong at the gathering and that I had pushed my way in. Finally, the agony was over, at least. I contacted my husband after they departed and filled him in on everything. I told him not to, at least not that night, even though he was furious and wanted to talk to his sister. I didn't want more arguments and thought it would only make things worse. All I needed was some quiet. But for me, serenity wasn't in the cards. My in-laws called me the following morning, and they were really upset. They informed me that Carrie and Jim got into a heated argument when they got home from the baby shower. Jim had made the decision to go and was not talking to Carrie or any of her relatives, including my in-laws. This was startling because Jim had always gotten along well with his in-laws, who were his parents' longtime family friends. Following the altercation, Jim's whole family made it apparent that they didn't want to communicate with Carrie and her family by blocking them on social media and elsewhere. Carrie and my in-laws seemed to think that if I had simply sucked it up and followed Carrie's instructions, none of this would have occurred, but I couldn't see why I was being pulled into it. The fact that they were attempting to place the responsibility on me while Carrie was clearly at fault struck me as ridiculous. I snapped at them, telling them that I wouldn't accept responsibility for something that wasn't my fault. Carrie had shown no gratitude. She humiliated me by informing me I couldn't attend an event in my own home, even though I had kindly let her host the baby shower for free at my house. She didn't think I was close enough to her family, therefore she wanted me to go. I informed them that Carrie wouldn't have dared to do this if my husband had been around. I also assured them that I didn't regret telling Jim about her actions. Since he was the only sensible person in the circumstance, I trusted Jim's judgment and knew he was making the proper choice if he decided he had had enough and wanted to leave. I didn't think I had done anything wrong, and I didn't think Jim was doing anything wrong, so I wasn't going to try to make things right. He had my support if he desired a divorce. I had no intention of contacting him or retracting anything. My in-laws would be dissatisfied if they called to beg me to talk to him and make this right, since I wouldn't do it. I hung up after saying that. They have been making every effort to get me to reply, but we haven't spoken since. They keep claiming that any issues were between Carrie and me, so even though I haven't blocked them yet, I'm thinking about it. I don't see their reasoning when they say that I had no justification for including Jim in this. I chose to inform Carrie's husband about it, even if it was just between us. I thought he should be aware, as he is also a member of the family. Considering how terrible she was acting and how unappreciative she had been, I don't think I did anything wrong by telling him. I trusted that her husband, being sensible, would deal with it properly, so I thought he should know. Despite their best efforts to control the situation and make me feel guilty, I don't feel guilty at all. They keep claiming that her child might not have a father role in their life as a result of my choice. They're framing it that way, but I believe it's a stretch. To that, I'm not even sure how to react. Even though my spouse doesn't believe I did anything wrong, their comments are making me doubt myself, which is the only reason I haven't blocked them yet. He has informed me that he will speak with his parents to assist them see that Carrie was to blame and not me. He feels that rather than targeting me, they ought to concentrate on helping her. I don't know how to respond to this. Although I don't feel sorry for them, their actions suggest that they won't be letting this go anytime soon. All I want is for this to end. I don't currently have any answers because I also don't know why Carrie behaved in that manner. Am I to blame for bringing up our disagreement with my sister-in-law's husband and letting him know how she acted? First update. Nearly a week has passed since the baby shower. Jim and Carrie are currently going through a final divorce. He made the big news announcement on social media, but she hasn't made any public comments. Although I didn't anticipate it happening so quickly, it appears that he has already filed the petition and that the proceedings will shortly begin. Since Jim returned to living with his parents, they have been living apart. Even though I wasn't sure whether it was proper after everything that had transpired, I was able to talk to Jim. Although I felt a little bad about it, my spouse recommended that someone in our family get in touch. Jim was obviously keeping the lines of communication open for us because we were the only two individuals he had not blocked. I made the decision to call him. I didn't present it as an apology when I told him I was sorry for all that was going on. I didn't present it as an apology, but I did say that I was generally sorry for everything. I suppose Jim could sense my shame in spite of it. He gave me his word that I didn't have to feel bad about it or hold myself responsible. he claimed to have been on edge for a while. I felt I needed answers, so after some trepidation, I texted him back to find out what was actually happening. And I got them, boy. I told him I wanted to learn more when we got on the phone. I had no idea why Carrie didn't want me to the baby shower, so he agreed that I deserved some explanation. The only explanation she gave, as best as I can tell, was that she only wanted her immediate relatives present. She had, however, invited a number of people who, as far as I knew, weren't very close to her. I was aware that some of the guests on the guest list didn't appear to be any closer to her than I was. Since I had nothing against anyone on the list and, as far as I knew, no one had anything against me, it didn't make sense that I wasn't on it. Carrie's true reason for not wanting me there was disclosed by Jim. One of her pals, whom she was making a valiant effort to impress, was supposed to be there. This friend had wed into a family of rich industrialists. Carrie sought to persuade her friend's husband to invest in her business as she intended to launch her own venture a few months after the birth of her child. Carrie had planned the baby shower in my place to impress this buddy, telling everyone it was hers. She obviously couldn't keep up that lie with me around. She wanted me out for that reason. She hadn't expected me to refuse to go and to stand my position. Fortunately for me, her friend was sick and was unable to attend the occasion. This did not, however, excuse Carrie's cunning actions. Jim confronted Carrie about what she had said to me when they arrived home. In order to impress her buddy and avoid admitting that the house wasn't hers, she acknowledged that she wanted me to remain away. She went out of her way to pretend she had a life she didn't in order to impress someone she went to school with, acting as though her deceit was completely normal. Jim informed her that she needed to apologize to me and that her behavior was unacceptable. He pointed out that rather than being grateful that I had allowed her to organize the event at my house, she had made fun of me. Carrie fought with Jim because she wouldn't accept that what she had done was wrong. This arrogant conduct had been causing them a lot of issues, and it seems that this wasn't the first time she had been found pretending to be someone she wasn't. Jim informed me that it seems they had been coping with such problems for a few years. She underwent a transformation shortly after they were married. She had been attempting to live above their means and present an illusion of luxury and money to impress unimportant people ever since their wedding. Her friends reportedly made disparaging remarks about the arrangements at her wedding, and it looked that she was deeply offended by such remarks. She is an adult, though, and shouldn't be influenced by such trivial matters. If those individuals made fun of her way of life or her financial situation, she ought to have taken them out of her life as they weren't true friends. Furthermore, she and Jim led a regular, pleasant life. It's not like they were impoverished. They might not be able to afford luxury, but they were doing well, and it didn't matter to anyone else. Carrie didn't have to make an impression. Carrie works at a marketing firm and hopes to launch her own business after the baby is born, while Jim is a real estate agent. She has much greater justification to save money rather than squander it on pointless items. Despite their lack of wealth, their stability and comfort should have been sufficient. Jim had made numerous attempts to convey this to Carrie, but it had never been successful. She was constantly making an effort to impress others by doing odd things, which led to constant issues between them. Jim had forgiven it throughout the years because he loved her. In recent months, though, he had found it more difficult to put up with. They needed to be more frugal because they were expecting a kid, but Carrie kept squandering money carelessly as though it didn't matter. Given their financial circumstances, this was particularly troublesome because they were unable to support the lifestyle she was attempting to attain. Jim was getting fed up with her continuing to buy things without asking his permission. Too often they had been fighting over things like this. Jim departed after the altercation at the baby shower because he could no longer stand it. He informed me that, considering the status of their marriage, he would have made this choice sooner or later even if I hadn't called him that day. I didn't have to feel bad about what I did, he told me. I talked to my husband about this, and although he was sorry for Carrie, he couldn't claim that it wasn't justified. Although Jim was not a close friend, we were aware that he had been Carrie's devoted spouse. We assumed he must have given it some thought if he chose to go. Carrie must be going through a really tough time, especially because she is pregnant, so I do feel awful for her. But she caused this for herself. How a mature woman worries so much about the views of a few vapid, gossipy, inconsequential pals is beyond me. She should have moved on from this high school conduct long ago. She is in her 30s. I'm hoping that they can work things out and decide what they want. I believe that Jim will benefit from some time away in order to make the best decision. I will no longer become involved in this. Since I feel like I have nothing else to say to Carrie and my in-laws, I intend to block them both. Whether that means getting back together or finalizing the divorce, I hope they can resolve their differences. Jim sounded unhappy when we spoke, even though he had already announced the divorce. He was interested in trying to make things right and give Carrie another shot. But it appears that he is finding it quite difficult to do so because of her stubbornness. Although this may be a contentious viewpoint, I believe they ought to at least attempt to resolve the conflict. Given that her behavior is out of character for someone in her 40s, Carrie might want to think about going to therapy. It is not sustainable or healthy to try to please unimportant people. For the benefit of their child in particular, I want things to work out. It's never easy to be a kid of divorce, and I wouldn't want my future niece or nephew to experience that. I'm praying for the best and avoiding all of this for the time being. My spouse has made the same decision. My husband is returning home this weekend, so we are getting together. I don't believe he intends to go see his folks this time. All I can say is that I'm glad I have nothing to feel bad about anymore. Second update. We've been chatting since my spouse got back a few hours ago. He informed me that he had been in communication with Jim for the past few days. Jim has stated that he is prepared to give his marriage another try provided Carrie accepts his apology for everything and consents to attend therapy. My husband is attempting to explain this to his sister, but she has not yet replied. According to his parents, Carrie is currently avoiding people because she is sad and needs some alone time. Right now, she seems to be getting the distance she needs from everyone. I hope she makes a sensible decision, but I have no idea what she will decide. Some people accused me of selfishness in relation to my last piece, claiming that my husband and I were being avaricious by refusing to assist Jim and Carrie. Let me start by saying that I have no idea how anyone came to that conclusion. We purchased this home because it was reasonably priced. We wouldn't have bought it if it had been too expensive. Second, Jim and Carrie's financial situation is secure. They wouldn't likely enjoy it if we treated them like they were in need of charity. Since my husband and I share a similar income, they have no reason to require our assistance, and vice versa. Although it's unrelated, I felt compelled to clarify because some people raised it. I was also chastised by several of you for expressing a desire for them to reconcile. You think Jim deserves better, and perhaps he does, but in the end, it's up to him. I don't understand why so many people, who don't even know Jim, feel the need to call me names, spew venom, and brand him a doormat. Despite their present problems, they still love one another, and they are soon to become parents. That is significant. They cannot simply leave one another and pretend that nothing occurred. Yes, I did, and I still hope they can resolve their differences. For now, I believe that's all I have to say. Third update. I just wanted to let you know that Jim and Carrie have made the decision to work on their marriage and patch things up, even though it has been a few weeks since my last report. Despite the fact that Carrie and I are still at odds, I'm quite delighted for them. According to my spouse, they have decided to attend marital therapy for a few months to see the results. They will continue to live apart for the time being. They intend to co-parent for the first several months once the baby is born. They will return to living together if all goes according to plan. That is the future strategy. I'm pleased for them. Since most people seem to want Jim to leave Carrie, I know that this isn't the result that many of you were hoping for. But everyone else will have to recognize that Jim has made the decision to act in his own best interests. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My husband demanded a DNA test to deny that the baby was his. He was having an affair and planning to take control of my father-in-law's company. The words that just came out of my husband's mouth are far worse than the pain that rips through me like a sharp blade. Adam comes forward, his pricey suit immaculately ironed despite the 12 hours we've spent in this delivery room, while I'm still gasping for air, trembling and drenched in sweat. I want a DNA test. He doesn't question our baby daughter's paternity. His voice is dispassionate and flat, as if he's ordering coffee. With her hands still holding our baby, my baby? The nurse freezes. The beeping monitors suddenly become too loud and obtrusive, and the room appears to shrink. Dr. Collins's wrinkled face wrinkles in worry as he looks up from his charts. Adam, what are you talking about? My voice has an odd, aloof quality, as if it were someone else's. He refuses to look at me. Rather, he looks coldly and calculatingly at our daughter, who weighs 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfection. You heard me, McKenna. I want proof she's mine. Like poison gas, the accusation lingers in the air. This is the result of 12 years of marriage. To make him feel even a small portion of the agony pulsing through my chest, I want to shout and throw something. Rather, I chuckle. It's a harsh, bitter, terrible sound. Get out. In my mouth, the words taste like metal. Get out before I call security. Dr. Collins begins. Mrs. Harrison. But Adam interrupts. I have every right to be here, and every right to request this test. His fingers skim the screen as he takes out his phone. My lawyer says. Your lawyer? "You've been talking to your lawyer while I was in labor?" I blurt out. The only indication that he is still capable of feeling guilt is a faint flush that appears on his neck. I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. Weeks. The term keeps repeating in my mind. My husband was organizing this ambush as I was folding little onesies and choosing nursery colors. I feel as though I've been physically struck by the understanding. Bless the nurse, she puts herself in our way. "Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion outside." "No." I ignore my aching body's protest and push myself to sit up straighter. Let him stay. Let him watch the test. Let him see exactly how wrong he is. Something flickers in Adam's eyes, but his expression remains unchanged. Disappointment? Solace? I'm no longer able to tell. I used to be familiar with all telltale signs and micro-expressions. At what point did my husband lose his identity? Dr. Collins adds, "I'll arrange it immediately," in a deliberately bland tone. Though I must say, in my 30 years of practice, "Just do it," instructs Adam. I used to find his nervous habit of straightening his tie charming. The sooner we know the truth, the better. The truth, as though he still knows what that word implies. My girl, our daughter, is sleeping soundly in the bassinet, oblivious to the storm that is building all around her. Her dark hair, like mine, is already beginning to curl, and her little fingers are balled into fists. Even though my hands are shaking, I answer, "Fine," in a calm voice. "Do the test. But when it proves what I already know, don't expect forgiveness." It buzzes on Adam's phone. When he looks at it, his mask briefly comes off, guilt, terror. He's on his way to the door before I can comprehend it. He says, "I'll be back tomorrow," without turning around. "My lawyer will contact you about the arrangements." After he leaves, the door clicks shut, and I can breathe again. Dr. Collins touches my shoulder tenderly. "McKenna, I'm so sorry." "Don't." My fingers already discover Sam's number as I grab for my phone. "I'll let my cousin know what to do. He always does. Just get me the paperwork for the test. And, Dr. Collins, make sure it's witnessed at every step." His eyes light up with comprehension as he nods. "Of course." I gaze at my daughter once more, committing to memory every exquisite feature of her face. One thing is certain, regardless of the game Adam is playing or the falsehoods he is telling himself, he doesn't know what he's begun. After 3 days in the hospital, Sam feels as though his flat is a haven. As Tara bustles around the kitchen brewing tea, I curl up with Emma on his worn leather couch. My worries are calmed by the familiar smell of coffee grounds and old books, but my hands continue to shake. Saying, "He's changed all the locks," I observe Sam pacing. "Changed the security codes too. 12 years of marriage, and he locks me out like I'm some kind of criminal." With his journalist's notebook already stuffed with scrawled notes, Sam stops pacing. When exactly did things start changing with Adam? Think back carefully. The inquiry is a kind of gut strike. I close my eyes and attempt to remember when my marriage started to go apart. When I say, maybe 4 months ago. He started working late, missing doctor's appointments. Said it was a big merger, the Preston Tech deal. Tara's expression is disturbed as she puts down a mug of chamomile tea. That closed months ago. I gave it a quick glance. How do you know that? Because my sister works in their PR department. Tara and Sam exchange glances. The deal fell through in March. March. When Adam began bringing pricey new suits home. When the enigmatic business travels started. When he completely stopped caressing me. Sam taps his pen against the notebook and says, "This is what doesn't add up. Why wait until the baby is born to demand a DNA test? Why not do it during pregnancy?" Because he needed a scene, states Tara in a low voice. He needed witnesses. It dawns on me like a blast of cold water. He's assembling evidence against me. Emma stirs in my arms, and I instinctively move her blanket. Her little face reminds me of how calm and trustworthy I used to be. Sam says, "There's something else." But he hesitates. I made some calls. Adam's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January. January. When I initially informed him of my pregnancy. He remarked that everything was fine as he grinned and gave me a hug. That son of a... I stopped myself and glanced down at Emma. Why go through with the pregnancy if he was planning this all along? Because of the Harrison family trust, Tara responds accordingly. Your father-in-law's will had specific conditions about heirs, didn't it? Things begin to come together. The trust only pays out if there are legitimate children. Even I can hear the hollowness in my voice. He needed proof the baby wasn't his to invalidate the claim. Sam hears a buzzing sound on his phone. His face darkens as he looks at it. Adam just posted on LinkedIn. He's accepted a new position at Grant Technologies. Grant? Something in my memory is triggered by the name. Wait, isn't that the company that tried to buy out Harrison Industries last year? Sam concludes. The same one your father-in-law refused to sell to before he died. We all jump when someone knocks on the door. Glancing through the peephole, Tara takes a rapid step back. It's Adam. I say. Don't open it. And squeeze Emma tighter. Adam's words, McKenna, echo through the door. I know you're in there. The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present. I take Sam's arm as he approaches the door. Wait, let him talk. Adam goes on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. His voice becoming almost soft. Just come home. We can work this out. I slowly get to my feet so as not to wake Emma. Work what out, Adam? The lies? The secret meetings? Or how about the trust fund you're trying to steal? Quiet. Next. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. I no longer tremble when I speak. I know about Grant Technologies. I know about the divorce lawyers, and soon, I'll know everything else too. One more pause. The veneer of tenderness vanishes when he talks again. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. My heart hardens as I gaze down at our kid, my girl. Game on, Adam. He backtracks along the corridor. After locking the door, Sam looks at me. What's the plan? I take my phone out and go through my old contacts until I locate the one I need. First, we find out everything we can about Grant Technologies, and then I hit the dial. We call in some favors. Before a recognizable voice responds, the phone rings again. Dr. Collins, I need your help with something. With a somber expression, Dr. Collins slips the phone across his desk. These messages were automatically backed up to the cloud account you shared. I thought you should see them. When I take up the smartphone, my hands shake. 3:47 a.m. is the timestamp displayed. I went into labor 2 days prior. The message says, everything's arranged. Once the test results come back, she won't have any claim to the trust. Make sure you stick to the plan. Adam has responded. She suspects nothing. Just keep your father focused on the merger. Evelyn Grant, says Dr. Collins in a low voice. Daughter of Marcus Grant. I find the name to be bitter. Last year, he attempted to compel my father-in-law to sell his business. With his journalistic instincts taking over, Sam leans forward. The same Marcus Grant who mysteriously acquired 3 board seats after your father-in-law's death. I continue to scan through texts, each one getting worse. Plans, meetings, and personal information that makes me queasy. Since January, when I informed him about the pregnancy, they have been dating. When Sam says, the timing's not coincidental, Grant Technologies announced their hostile takeover bid last week. With Adam's help, they'll have controlling interest in Harrison Industries unless there's a legitimate heir. The parts fit together perfectly. That's why he needs the DNA test, to show Emma isn't his. It's not about the baby at all, it's about the company. We are interrupted by a knock. Tara enters with a pallid face. Adam's here, with lawyers. Even though my heart is racing, I make myself remain composed. Let them in. Adam walks in with 2 suits that probably cost more than my yearly income, as if he owns the place. He's wearing a tie I've never seen before, and he appears colder and sharper. Dr. Collins begins. This is a private medical facility, but Adam interrupts. We're conducting a paternity test that my client has every right to oversee. The senior attorney takes the stand. We have concerns about potential tampering. I chuckle. I'm unable to stop it. Tampering? That's rich, coming from you. Adam's mouth clenches. Careful, McKenna, you're already facing potential fraud charges. I hold out the phone and ask, if what? If these messages somehow become public? The ones showing you and Evelyn planning to steal your father's company? He becomes motionless. I catch a glimpse of genuine terror in his eyes. You had access to my your private messages? On our shared cloud account? I get to my feet, my rage giving me courage. The one you forgot to disconnect when you were so busy planning your little corporate takeover? Something is whispered in Adam's ear by the younger attorney. His expression gets gloomy. He responds. This changes nothing. But his tone falters. The test will proceed exactly as planned. Dr. Collins cuts in. Under my supervision. With witnesses present, unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're colluding with Grant Technologies while serving as Harrison Industries CFO. Sam moves forward while Adam's hand fumbles with his phone. I wouldn't. My article about corporate espionage at Grant Technologies goes live in an hour. Fascinating stuff about insider trading and family betrayal. Adam responds, "You're bluffing," yet his forehead is dripping with perspiration. I approach while speaking quietly. "You want a war, Adam? Fine. But remember, you taught me everything about corporate finance during those late-night strategy sessions. Everything. McKenna? And I learned something else from you too." I show him his most recent communication to Evelyn, which has to do with love and the words, "forever always." "Keep receipts." The attorneys look at each other. His throat is cleared by the elder. "Perhaps we should discuss terms." "No terms," I respond, observing Adam's flawless exterior crumble. "No deals. You wanted to play dirty? Let's play. But remember, you're not just fighting for money anymore, you're fighting for survival." Adam's shoulders are stiff with rage as they depart. Sam lets out a faint whistle. "That was just the beginning?" I finish sitting back down as my legs threaten to give out. "Doctor, how long till the test results, Collins?" 24 hours, he adds, closely examining me. "Are you certain of this? After we begin?" "I'm sure." I glance at the picture of him and my father-in-law at the medical school graduation that is on his desk. He made the incorrect decisions. I'm not going to make the same error. Squeezing my shoulder, Sam asks, "What comes next?" I take out my personal phone and navigate to a number I never would have imagined using. We then speak with Evelyn Grant. She has to find out what sort of man she's actually interacting with. I feel small as I adjust Emma's carrier on my arm, trying to see my reflection in the polished marble of the Grant Technologies lobby, which gleams with wealth and power, all steel and glass reaching toward the sky. I'm wearing one of Adam's favorite suits, the one he bought me for board meetings, and it fits differently now, but the armor is what counts. The receptionist says, "Miss Grant is in a meeting," without even looking up. "Tell her McKenna Harrison is here," I add, keeping my voice calm, "with her fiancé's baby." Her head shoots up, eyes widening as she takes in Emma's dark hair, which are much like Adam's, and the clicking of keys stops. After 5 minutes, I find myself seated across from Evelyn Grant in her corner office. She is younger than I thought she would be, and her engagement ring, which is 3 carats and princess cut, is perfectly polished, resembling the one in Adam's browser history. But her hands betray her, squeezing a pen until her knuckles turn white. "I don't understand," she says. "Adam never mentioned a wife. A baby." Emma fusses, but I handle it with practiced ease. Funny how those details slip his mind when he's planning corporate takeovers. Color fades from her face. "You can't prove," she says. With screenshots visible, I move my phone across her desk. "I can, in fact. When your father finds out that his ideal future son-in-law is still married, what will he say? That he's manipulating Harrison Industries stock by utilizing your relationship." She says, "You're lying," but she's already reading, swiping through messages with her immaculately manicured finger. I go on, observing her expression. "The DNA test is tomorrow." Adam seems pretty certain about the results, almost as if he knows something I don't. She looks up abruptly, and her eyes flicker with dread and recognition. Sam's text makes my blood run cold, and my phone buzzes. The lab was broken into yesterday night. Security footage was deleted. Evelyn murmurs, "He wouldn't," more to herself than to me. "Your father's company stands to gain millions if Harrison Industries falls," I declare, leaning forward. "And Adam stands to gain everything, unless there's a legitimate heir." When the pen she is holding breaks, ink spills down her immaculate desk calendar, discoloring both merger dates and wedding venue appointments. "Get out," she says tremblingly, "before I call security." I slowly stand up, drawing Emma next to me. "What's funny, do you know? 5 years ago, he purchased the same ring for me. Promised me the same thing indefinitely. Utilized the same pet names as well." I said, "Get out." I whisper, "Check his phone. The one he keeps in his gym locker. The one that conveys genuine messages." She becomes motionless. "How did you?" "Because I used to be you. Young, in love, and sure that he was unique." I make my way to the door, then stop. "Oh, and Evelyn, pay attention to his left eyebrow when you confront him. When he lies, it quivers." On her broken face, the elevator doors close. "It's done," I text Sam, my hands shaking. "Begin the second phase?" He responds right away. Tara's lab contact verified attempts at manipulation. The test is being moved to a secure location by Dr. Collins. My heart stops when I open another message that appears from an unknown number. Adam writes, "Clever girl, but you can't remember who taught you how to play chess. Check your email from Harrison Industries." The creative accounting remedies you assisted me with last year are going public, or you have an hour to leave the board. It's your turn. My stomach churns as I realize how long Adam has been plotting this. I stare at the screen, remembering late evenings spent poring over spreadsheets, following his advice, and signing agreements he swore were regular. I see my father-in-law's fortitude, my own resolve, and something else, something Adam never understood about the Harrison legacy, in Emma's face as she stirs, her little fingers capturing my finger. I call Dr. Collins. How soon will you get access to last year's original audit files? Already done, he responds. And McKenna, I discovered something intriguing in your father-in-law's personal documents. It has to do with a backup plan. I'm grinning for the first time in days. Tell me everything. The game is only getting started. With its clean whiteness and security cameras monitoring our every step, the safe lab feels like a fortress. Dr. Collins stands at the testing station, his face impassive while Adam's lawyers hover close, and Emma sleeps in her carrier, unaware of the tension that permeates the space. Dr. Collins says, all parties will remain present, and the results will be available in 30 minutes. With mascara smearing her cheeks and her flawless poise ruined, Evelyn storms in as the door flings open. You're a jerk. Adam takes a step back, his self-assured facade falling off. Evelyn, this isn't the locker at the gym. She throws her phone in his direction. It strikes the wall with a crash. You're still married despite having 3 other ladies. The lawyers look at one another in panic, and one of them grabs for his briefcase, but Sam stops him. Until we hear those results, he continues softly. Nobody leaves. I had forgotten Adam's uneasy gesture until he straightened his tie. This is absurd. Whatever you heard from McKenna. She didn't have to tell me anything, Evelyn murmurs. Your friend Marcus was quite helpful once I showed him the real numbers behind the Grant Technology merger. Adam's face loses color. You didn't. Daddy's on his way, she replies, her smile harsh and cruel. With the SEC. A message from Tara says, security footage recovered, lab break-in suspect identified. My phone vibrates. I slide the phone to Dr. Collins, who stares at Adam's younger lawyer and begins to perspire after examining the picture. Dr. Collins remarks, interesting? Very interesting indeed. I can see Adam's eyes flit between us, calculating that expression he gets when he's about to give up a piece to keep his game alive. The accounting discrepancies, he continues abruptly. All of which McKenna approved. She bears equal responsibility. With the exception of the backup plan, I interrupt, observing his expression. The one my father-in-law left with Dr. Collins prior to his passing. Adam becomes motionless. What? Adam, he was aware. Concerning the embezzlement. Concerning Grant Technologies. Including your attempts to access Emma's trust fund before she was even born, I reply steadily. He documented everything. The senior attorney clears his throat, saying, Mr. Harrison, maybe we ought to stop talking. Adam utterly loses his cool and turns to face me, his fists clenched. You're playing a bluff. Richard never did. Your father trusted me. Whispers Dr. Collins quietly. Not just as his doctor, but as executor of his estate, including the real will. The device emits a beep. Test results ready? Sam stops Adam before he can get the printout. It's over, Sam declares. The SEC has everything, the fake DNA test orders, the embezzlement records, even your deals with Marcus. Adam backs away from the door when he hears heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing in the hallway. McKenna, he attempts, his tone lessening to that well-known deceptive one. We can still make this right. For Emma's benefit. Don't you dare use our daughter as a bargaining chip, I shout, my words blazing like venom. The door opens, and Marcus Grant comes in first, followed by 2 SEC agents, while Tara records everything with her phone. One agent says, Adam Harrison, you are being investigated for securities fraud. The events that follow are shown in slow motion. Sam yells something about betrayal, Adam rushes toward the emergency exit, the younger lawyer blocks him, and Emma sleeps soundly through it all, oblivious to the fact that her world is turning on its axis. Dr. Collins holds out the test findings while touching my arm. Are you curious? I look at the paper and go back to all the times I questioned whether Adam was telling the truth or if I had failed as a mother or a wife. As I watch the SEC agents handcuff my spouse, I finally respond, no, because the outcomes are no longer important. She is my daughter. I only need to know that. Marcus Grant walks toward his tomb. Mrs. Harrison, your testimony is required tomorrow. I interrupted, drawing Emma next to me. I'm taking my daughter home right now, and as we go, I hear Adam yelling my name, desperate now, realizing what he's lost, and I don't turn back. Some games aren't worth winning, and some victories come from walking away rather than seeking revenge. I have all I need in my arms tonight, but tomorrow will come attorneys, testimony, and struggles for control of Harrison Industries. Perhaps it's because half of the board resigned when the SEC probe went public, or perhaps it's because Dr. Collins is constantly looking at his watch or Sam avoids eye contact, but the Harrison Industries boardroom is colder than I remember. Spreading papers across the gleaming table, Marcus Grant declares, "The evidence is conclusive. The DNA test results were altered before they reached the lab." However, my client maintains that Mrs. Harrison was complicit in the financial irregularities. Adam's new attorney interrupts. I say, "The signatures on these documents were forged, but even I sound insincere." "I never? Can you demonstrate it?" "Because these trading records show otherwise," the attorney says, advancing further documents. "During the relevant period, there were significant transfers to your personal account. Adam requested that I cease keeping an eye on our joint account because he had it handled, and my hands shake when I recognize the account numbers." Sam rises up suddenly and says, "This is absurd. When McKenna approved these transactions, she was on maternity leave? The timestamps say otherwise." The lawyer's smirk is shark-like. "The contingency plan has been compromised," Marcus Grant begins, his words tumbling like stones, while Dr. Collins clears his throat. "Last night, someone gained access to Richard Harrison's secret files. Everything is gone." The room whirls, and I hold onto the edge of the table as the floor moves beneath me. "That isn't feasible. The security procedures," the lawyer explains, almost empathetically, "were bypassed using your credentials along with some very interesting emails about offshore accounts." My phone is buzzing, and Tara is sending me urgent updates. Speculation about the DNA test issue is growing on social media, news sites are reporting on fraud at all levels of Harrison Industries, and the business stock is plunging. I can explain, but Adam's attorney raises his hand. "Save it for the SEC hearing. In the meantime, the board has called for an emergency vote of no confidence, given the circumstances," he says, standing up and arranging his papers. "You can't," I cry, my throat clenched. "My father-in-law dedicated his life to this business. He had faith in me." I recoil when I hear Adam's voice. He stands in the doorway, spotless even with his ankle monitor for home imprisonment. "As if I trusted you not to tell Evelyn behind my back. Don't you dare." "The board needs stability," he adds calmly. "Someone with clean hands to bring it through this storm. Thankfully, I have a deal with the SEC that calls for complete cooperation in return for a lighter sentence." The falsified signatures, the corrupted data, and the meticulously crafted paper trail that leads directly to me all fit together. The understanding tastes like ash as I reply, "You're going to pin everything on me? The fraud, the cover-up, all of it?" I told Evelyn that. He twitches his left eyebrow. "McKenna, you caused this to yourself. If you had only cooperated? Did you play along?" I get up so fast that my chair falls over. "You stole my daughter's inheritance, right? Richard built everything, but you ruined it all. Your daughter?" His grin turns ruthless. "Roughly." The results of the initial DNA test were really intriguing. The audience falls silent, and as Sam approaches Adam, security personnel intervene. I murmur, "You're lying." But skepticism seeps in like poison. I think about all those late hours at work, the enigmatic business trips, and how he never wanted to talk about nursery colors or baby names. Am I? He takes out his phone and displays a lab result that I had never seen before. "Do you want to know how these genetic markers work?" Adam's attorney interrupts Dr. Collins before he can finish speaking. "In light of the situation, my client is ready to request complete custody. When evaluating a person's suitability for parenthood, the court typically disapproves of fraud and embezzlement." I hear Emma's midnight sobs and morning laughter, see her face with her small fingers and dark curls, and feel the weight of her in my arms. The only thing that has seemed genuine since this nightmare started. "The board votes in an hour," Adam replies quietly. "So step down immediately. Give us your shares, and we might be able to set up supervised visits." I sway and Sam takes my arm. "McKenna, don't." My vision is blurring though, and I'm already reaching for the resignation letter. Sometimes surrendering isn't about giving up. Sometimes it's about buying time to fight in a different way. Sam stands guard at the door while Tara works her magic on the computer, and Dr. Collins's office feels strange at midnight, with shadows creeping across his father's medical degrees and the steady hum of backup generators masking our footsteps. "Found it," she murmurs. "The original backup of the server. During the purge, Adam's crew didn't notice it. When I put in the flash drive Richard Harrison gave me years ago, his insurance policy, which I never imagined I'd need, my hands trembled. How much time? Tara's fingers dart across the keyboard as she says, if your father-in-law's passwords still work, it will take 10 minutes to decrypt. Adam stands with 2 security guards on either side of him, his ankle monitor glowing accusingly in the dark as the door slams wide. I knew you'd try something desperate. He straightens his handcuffs and enters. How about breaking and entering? That will appear awful during the custody hearing. Sam shifts between us. How did you discover? Adam's eyes do not meet his smile. Dr. Collins isn't as devoted as you believed. Everybody has a cost. Like the cost of Evelyn? Or was she just another stepping stone? The words have a harsh bite. For a moment, he loses his composure. You don't understand what's at stake. Tara whispers. 7 minutes, behind me. Adam narrows his gaze. It won't matter what you're attempting to recover. Tomorrow morning, the board will cast its vote. Your resignation has already been handled. As I watch the progress meter crawl, I remark. The funny thing about resignations is that they're not valid if they were signed under duress or if the person requesting them is engaging in fraud. He chuckles, but there's a hint of doubt. You can't prove anything. 5 minutes, replies Tara. Adam gives the guards a signal. Stop it. Now. Wait. I take a step forward and play my final card. The actual DNA is the outcome. Bring them to me. We've been through this. Either show me, or I'll send the SEC whatever we discover. Each and every email, each and every transaction, each time you meet with Marcus Grant. He twitches his left eyebrow. You're bluffing. 3 minutes, declares Tara. Sam stiffens, prepared to step in as the guards approach the computer. She's yours. Everyone is frozen in place by Adam's comments. The actual test, the DNA test. It demonstrates you own her. I needed leverage, so I changed the outcomes. I just sense clarity, even though the admission should be painful. In any case, you never desired her, did you? She was merely another resource to manage. 2 minutes. At last, Adam's facade breaks. You believe this has to do with a baby? Richard promised me authority and control when he appointed me CFO, and that's what this is all about. I whisper. He promised you a legacy, not a kingdom to steal. 1 minute. Adam jumps for the computer, but Sam stops him while Tara covers the screen. Amidst the confusion, a phone that I've never seen before falls out of Adam's pocket, and I quickly find the messages. Talks with Marcus Grant, plans to steal parts from Harrison Industries, and more, emails from Dr. Collins. With a triumphant "it's done," Tara declares, everything's decrypted. Adam becomes motionless. You don't want to open that file. However, I already am. The room is filled with the voice of Richard Harrison, who made a video confession only days before he died, naming people, outlining plans, and revealing one more surprise. Finally understanding, I tell Adam, Richard changed his will before he died. The company was never yours to steal. Emma was left in charge of his interest. Impossible, Adam, trembling, adds. She wasn't even born. I show him the will's date. Adam, he was aware. Almost everything, including the fraud, the affairs, and the agreements with Grant Technologies. You've been playing the exact game he anticipated the entire time. Adam's face twists in rage as he hears police sirens blaring in the background. You believe you've triumphed? The board, the proof, and your written confession are still with me. Sam whispers. Check your phone, the real one you just dropped. With the SEC reopening their investigation, Marcus Grant making agreements to save himself, Evelyn's father withdrawing all support, and Dr. Collins sending one more message, Adam's eyes widen as the communications pour in. Richard, I fulfilled my pledge. The heritage of your granddaughter is secure. Some wins aren't about winning. They're about defending what counts most. As Adam collapses, his empire of lies crumbling around him, the cops storm in, but I'm already leaving, thinking of Emma sleeping soundly at home. There are still remnants of yesterday night's pandemonium in the Harrison Industries boardroom. Evidence markers litter the conference table where Adam's business finally fell apart, police tape crosses the entryway, and Dr. Collins offers me a leather portfolio. The private documents of Richard Harrison. When the time was right, he wanted you to have these, he says softly. Beneath years of financial documents and business plans, I discover a letter inside. The paper is old, the ink is fading, but Richard's firm handwriting is still legible. My beloved McKenna, you'll see why I choose you to guard Emma's estate by now. That legacy isn't measured in stock prices or merger deals, not because you're Adam's wife, but because you saw what he couldn't. It is ingrained in decision-making moments, in choosing to defend instead of destroy. Emma fusses about her job. I shift her blanket, see my image in the darker windows, and I appear different in some way. Stronger, perhaps, or simply more confident. Sam shows up at the door. The SEC wants to review the video testimony again, and Evelyn Grant is here. When Evelyn walks in, I anticipate fury, but all I see in her eyes is tiredness. She says, "Daddy is resigning." The board approved the dissolution of the merger attempt. She twists her now ringless fingers and rambles. The scandal. I told her, I never wanted this, and for the most part, it's true. Neither did I. Something softens in Emma's face as she looks at her. He also promised me children, you know? A future in which I genuinely had faith. I know, I responded. Because I did too, once. The doctor clears his throat. The new members of the board are ready. They will require guidance about the company's future. Richard's letter, decisions, and legacies come to mind. Inform them that we are reorganizing, beginning with the charitable foundation. Funding for programs that assist single parents should be doubled. From where she sits at the computer, already working on the press release, Tara smiles. We hear a commotion outside, and through the glass walls I see Adam being escorted out by federal officials, his flawless suit creased, his confidence mask finally shattered. He looks at me and begins to talk, but I turn away because some discussions aren't worth having. There's something else, Doctor. Collins says, holding out another envelope. Precise instructions regarding Emma's trust were left by your father-in-law. Money isn't the only factor. The grant is a challenge. Projects for community investment must equal every dollar. Finally comprehending, I chuckle. He ensured that the legacy would not be taken, it must be earned. Speaking of earning, Sam adds, the investigative piece just went live. The cost of truth and corporate corruption. However, in my opinion, karma in the boardroom sounded more fitting. As Emma falls asleep, I make the decision, no more karma, and no more retaliation either. Simply move forward. Dr. Collins' eyebrow goes up. What about Adam? We face justice through proper channels. Richard's portfolio is closed by me. I'm done playing his games. Evelyn gets up to go, but stops at the door. In my opinion, Richard made a wise decision. She nods to Emma, saying, not just for the company, but for her. When she leaves, I proceed to Richard's former office, where his nameplate still hangs on the door. It will soon read Harrison Industries Trust Management, and his presence permeates every thoughtfully chosen element. I discover a final message, dated the day of his death, tucked inside his desk calendar. Remember, knowing when to fight isn't what gives you power. Knowing when to stop is the key. I take Emma and inhale that lovely baby aroma as she wakes up, wanting attention with her father's determination but mercifully without any of his calculation. Are you prepared to return home? From the doorway, Sam asks. I corrected him, gathered our belongings, and said, not home. Forward. We bring lawyers, restructuring plans, and 1,000 decisions concerning Emma's future tomorrow, as reporters outside wait with questions about scandal and redemption. But now, in this silent triumph, I realize what Richard had known all along. Sometimes the best form of retaliation isn't demolishing what others have created, but rather creating something better out of the ashes they left behind. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I caught my wife cheating with her old fling on a hike. It turns out she and her friends had been using him as a surrogate joystick. I, Ali, 38, am currently on a camping hiking trip with my wife Liv, 36, and 3 other married couples, Dom and Kate, Sean and Sarah, Bill and Miranda, as well as Liv's longtime friend Ian, 38, and his boyfriend OD, whose real name is Orlando, and no, he was not named after the dog from Garfield. We're all in our mid-30s to early 40s and enjoy spending time outside. We've been wanting to go on this hike for a while. We camp at night and walk throughout the daytime. Everything was great until early evening on the 3rd day of our 8-day journey. We stopped to camp and my wife and I decided to explore the surroundings. We discovered a little waterfall feeding into a creek that followed the trail we had been trekking. It was roughly 5 feet tall and flowed largely onto rocky rocks below. My wife stated that she wanted to rinse off in the stream and waterfall but did not want to soak her clothes. I urged her to go for it because we weren't far from the others and the location was secluded enough. I responded, if you make it quick you could be in and out in no time. She did exactly that, lingered for a moment before stepping out and air drying with a tiny towel. Ian arrived unexpectedly from behind some trees after she had quickly put her shorts and panties back on. My wife was still topless. Here's where everything got weird. Neither of them responded. She proceeded to dress casually, and Ian approached as if he had seen her naked 100 times before. He told us that Dom wanted us to know something, but I can't remember what. My wife and Ian exchanged small talk before we all headed back to camp. It is now day 5. The hiking track leads to a small town, where we want to spend the night at a local inn to rest, resupply supplies and recover. For the past 2 days, I've been thinking about what happened at the waterfall. I tried to keep my thoughts hidden, but my wife questioned me this morning why I was so quiet yesterday. I told her I was weary, but in reality, I can't stop thinking about something that happened between her and Ian previously. I would normally be less skeptical, but I know Ian is not gay. I've known him for around 8 years and consider him a friend. We husbands and OD are the outliers in this group, as the 4 wives and Ian have been buddies since college. I've asked my wife before if she's ever dated Ian, and she's always responded no. I also inquired if Ian and any of the other ladies in the group had ever been in a relationship, and she denied that too. I might be delusional, but their relationship felt too similar, especially since she was still topless. My wife is usually very conservative about her body, so her lack of reaction to Ian's presence struck me as odd. I have no tangible reason to believe anything is wrong, but I can't shake the sensation that there's more to their history than friendship. Am I being paranoid, or is this a red flag? I am really trying not to leap to conclusions. Update 1. It's early morning on day 6 and I wanted to give you all an update. I told my wife Liv about what happened at the waterfall. I wanted to talk to her while we still had some privacy before heading back out on the trail, and I'm glad I did. I started as non-confrontational as possible, simply remarking that it seemed strange that she wasn't concerned by Ian's presence despite the fact that she was topless. If she had responded in any other way, I would have dropped it, but she became really defensive immediately. Is this why you've been moody? It's not a huge deal. Everyone has seen breasts before, including Ian. You have to grow up. This truly alarmed me. She rarely reacts forcefully until she feels bad about something. I probed harder and she grew more reactionary and defensive, attempting to deflect and belittle every question I posed, with a dash of gaslighting thrown in. I finally had enough and told her, either tell me what's going on or I'm going to confront Ian, who you know won't lie. This is when Liv revealed that she and Ian had a previous sexual relationship. I became enraged and demanded to know why she lied to me after I had previously asked her about it. She claimed she did not lie. They never dated. It was simply an FWB, friends with benefits situation before we became formal. I asked her, startled and agitated, so you were sleeping with him when we first started dating? She retorted, you don't have to be so vulgar. I don't want to discuss this right now. Can't we have this conversation when the trip is over? I said, absolutely not. Either you tell me everything now, or I'll start interrogating your pals. I believe she saw how serious I was and decided to reveal the whole truth. The first part I already knew. She had a string of bad relationships and dating encounters. Liv ascribed a large portion of this to not getting to know the other person before leaping into bed with them. When we started dating, she asked if we could take it slow. I accepted since I was also seeking for something unique and I was extremely intrigued in Liv. She said I could date others until we chose to be official, but I told her I didn't want to date around and preferred to focus on one relationship at a time. She stated it made her really happy. Then she divulged something that would shock everyone if it became public. Liv, Kate, Miranda, and Sarah all had comparable FWB situations with Ian while dating their current husbands. Kate, who is now married to Dom, became fed up with dating the wrong guys shortly after graduation. During this time, she and Ian became FWB. When she met Dom, she urged that they take it slow and get to know each other before becoming intimate. Kate stated it was simple because she was still sleeping with Ian, meeting her sexual needs while focusing on the emotional part with Dom. Ian was happy with the arrangement, assuring her that it was all about finding her special someone. They would talk about Dom and sleep together, and when Kate realized she had found the one, they ended the FWB arrangement and she began her sexual relationship with Dom. They eventually got married. Kate later informed the other women about their agreement. Throughout the years, they each used Ian as a surrogate while looking for the one. I'm only the most current individual involved in this circumstance. I asked Liv to explain her role. The other women's marriages are their own business, but I was curious how this worked out for her. She informed me that after her former lover had too many narcissistic characteristics, She had had enough and wanted to meet a good guy, which I suppose was me. She asked Ian to help her in the same manner he had helped the other three. Ian agreed, explaining that the whole affair was about finding her a life partner. I feel he was sincere in everything. He's a free-spirited type of person. I've had serious chats with Ian, and he's the type of person that will help anyone with anything. We play golf together and he has been in my life since I began dating Liv. I didn't realize he was so involved. Essentially, he would listen, offer counsel, and talk through her emotions so she could wait until she felt comfortable with me. I felt like throwing up. It feels like the entire relationship was a lie. Despite this, I continued to seek answers. I asked when she quit seeing Ian. She claimed it was when we became official. I told her that I thought we were formal when we agreed to date, so I asked her when she considered us official. She explained, dating does not constitute two people as a couple. When you asked me to commit and we had our first intercourse, we were official. She stated that she and Ian had been strictly platonic since that night. I mentioned, that was 7 months into dating. So you've been sleeping with him for 7 months? She became silent and I knew the answer. I said, let me be clear, I would pick you up for a date and we would go out and have a great time, holding hands, cuddling, kissing and making out. Then I'd drop you off and you'd meet Ian, sleep with him and brag about what a terrific person I am? She retorted, don't make it sound so dirty. I was appalled. I wanted to run but we were in the middle of nowhere and there was no way out except to keep walking forward. In retrospect, I wish I had just left, but instead I probed for more information. I inquired, when you say you slept together, do you mean you used him just to get yourself off, or do you mean you did all the positions, foreplay and kinky things that we do? She became very silent again. I gently stated, you must answer my questions. I need to know, and I will find out, whether it is from you or one of them. With that, I motioned towards the other rooms. She answered slowly, all of it, maybe even more than with you. The room began spinning, but I asked the dreaded question, when? When was the last time? She said, the night before our first time together. I'd never wanted to leave someone more than I did at that moment, yet all I could do was sit there in shock. She attempted to console me, but I ordered her to stay away. I needed time. With nowhere else to go, I gathered some blankets and pillows and slept on the floor at the foot of the bed. I passed out for a few hours, but I'm now up and making this update. I want to march out of here, but there's a 12-passenger van at the end of the route that I don't have the keys for. I'll have to stay with these people for another 2.5 days, with another half-day travel back. I do not know what to do. Part of me can understand the reasoning, but largely I'm heartbroken and believe our entire relationship was a scam. I feel like a silver medalist, not a champion. I also have an intense need to share everything with everyone, because all of these other guys are in the same circumstance. We are all here on false pretenses. I do not know what to do. I have about 1 hour till everyone gets up and then I'll have to face Ian and my wife. Am I overreacting? Is this marriage worth saving? I do not see how we can go back. Update 2. I'm back in the comfort of my own house. Unfortunately, I and several others may be facing divorce. I was able to keep it together for the majority of day 6, but I'm sure everyone could tell something was up with me. I remained quiet and pushed myself to get back to the van. I guess Liv grabbed Ian aside about lunchtime and told him what I knew. After that, Ian began attempting to buddy up with me and converse, despite my request that he leave me alone. He persisted a couple more times before I snapped and told him to stop it in a very strong manner. Liv intervened, and they both took the hint. I needed more time to process. The next 24 hours went relatively smoothly. Everyone just kind of left me alone. However, after snapping at Ian, his temperament altered dramatically. He shifted from his customary laid-back demeanor to becoming slightly distant with everyone. He would occasionally make subtle passive-aggressive remarks, nothing too explicit, but clearly intended at me. By the 7th night, we had set up camp, and I had relaxed a little, being more friendly with everyone. We were sitting around the campfire, finishing up the last of our meals. People were conversing, joking and sharing stories. Billy told a long embarrassing story from high school. It was a very humorous story about him and his first girlfriend, and he acted like an idiot. When he was done, he said something like, I still can't believe I was ever that dumb. I still cringe just thinking about it. Ian responded, well, at least you grew up. Some people never grow up and overcome their past. He then stared at me with the most disdainful expression. In that time, I experienced an out-of-body experience and saw only crimson. The filter was gone and logic was out the window. It was on. You know, Ian, you are right. Sometimes we just have to face the past head on. Liv attempted to interrupt, but I disregarded her totally. How about we address the fact that you used to have **** all our wives while we were dating? When I stated it, even the insects were quiet. Oh fellas, didn't you know either? Yeah, while they were holding out on us to make a connection, I air quoted, our future spouses were using Ian here as their human dildo. Dom and Billy seemed perplexed and angry. Sean had a look on his face like he'd just walked in on his grandmother fapping, complete train disaster astonishment. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Dom. It was Kate who devised this incredible strategy. She realized that the secret to developing a long-term relationship was to take things slowly and get to know each other before getting into bed. All you need to deal with the impulses is a best friend who will blow your back out when you get home from your dates all hot and bothered. Dom jumped in at this time. F*****Ku Ali. How do you know this? Oh, I just found out 2 days ago that when I took Liv out for drinks, that wasn't going to be the only thing she was swallowing that night. At this time, Liv lost control and began yelling at me. Why the F*** are you doing this? You don't have to. However, she was cut short when Sean stood up. It is true. It is entirely true. Everyone fell silent and glanced at him. I have known since we were dating. I didn't realize it was also true for everyone else until after we got married. I apologize, Billy. I swear I didn't realize it was you too back then. Billy's expression was one of dread. Sean, we used to have double dates with Miranda and Sarah. We went out several times and then dropped them off at Ian's. Does that imply they? Sean simply stared at him and nodded. I quickly turned to Ian. 2 at once, you hound dog. Then in a fit of bravery, I howled like a wolf. Which in retrospect is pretty terrible, but at the time, I thought it was funny. Arguments broke out among the couples all around us, but an audible gasp and whimper caught everyone's attention. OD sat there, tears spilling down his face. He looked at Ian and said, lies. More lies. It never ends. You always do this to me, no matter how much I forgive or how many times I return your affection. He then slapped Ian and bolted down the trail. Ian ran after him. The other 3 couples mumbled under their breath at each other, then began walking away in different directions. I stood beside the fire, feeling triumphant. Liv approached me and said, I hope you're happy. I looked her in the eyes and replied, I've never been more ****ing happy with myself in my whole life. I'm currently 80/20ths on obtaining a divorce. I suggested we postpone any major debates until we were home, unpacked, showered and nourished, because the only thing she would achieve before then is push me to my limits. At that instant, she turned and entered our tent. The following day was the most embarrassing 7 hours of my life. Between the morning pack-up, the hike to the van, loading up and the 4.5-hour journey home, only around 19 words were spoken. Now I'm sitting in my bathroom, newly showered. I'm going to eat some chicken nuggets, drink 3 Dr. Peppers and then converse with my wife. I'm not sure where we're headed from here, or where anyone else will wind up, but I know it won't be pretty regardless. Update 3. It's been 4 weeks since we returned from our trip and everything seems to have crumbled. Dom and Kate are getting divorced. They have been together the longest of the couples and have a 10-year-old son. Dom took the revelation quite hard. In addition to being together the longest, they also had the longest courtship period, 9 months. It's been a difficult pill for him to chew because he remembers they didn't truly got intimate until he began to wonder if he wanted to stay in the relationship. Now that he knows the truth, no matter what Kate says, he will always believe the delay was due to her desire to continue being with Ian. I sat down with Sean and had a couple beers one night. Despite the fact that we just met through our wives, we've been very close friends over the years. Sean stated that Sarah was straightforward with him when they began dating. She informed him she intended to wait at least 3 months before having sex, but that she would still meet with her FWB. Sean liked her but told her he was simply casually dating until he knew for sure, which Sarah was fine with. So, unlike the rest of us, Sean had a clear decision. Sean discovered he was falling for Sarah 2 weeks before the 3-month period ended, following a few double dates with Billy and Miranda. He informed her he wanted to be exclusive. She broke the 3-month limit and they became intimate that night and haven't looked back. Both were completely honest about their adventures at this time, and it appears that their candor paid off handsomely. Sean informed me they had a brief dispute after the campfire incident because Sarah felt they should have excused themselves rather than getting involved, but they are doing well as a couple overall. I've also got an update on Billy and Miranda. They are in the initial stages of reconciliation. Billy is clearly and understandably struggling. He believes she cheated and uses words to excuse it. They dated for 6 months before getting married, and they have 3 children under the age of 7, so they both believe they must try to make it work for the kids. Billy's toughest challenge is recalling dropping both Miranda and Sarah at Ian's on 2 consecutive occasions, knowing she had a threesome arranged. It reduced him to a shell of his former self. Miranda appears to have attempted to explain that they only did something on one of those nights, and it was more akin to a reverse train than a full threesome. Once again, semantics are used as an excuse. Sean assures me Miranda is speaking the truth, because Sarah was the second party and acknowledged it wasn't a true three-way. But honestly, does it matter? Ian reached out to apologize. I told him to F*** himself, then blocked him. OD also reached out. I guess my revelation was the final straw for him. We have actually talked quite a bit over the last few weeks. We actually talked a lot over the course of a week, despite the fact that we had previously merely been cordial acquaintances. It turns out that Ian and OD had been on and off for 15 years. Ian presents a laid-back, selfless appearance to everyone else, but OD knows him to be incredibly self-centered and manipulative. Ian frequently breaks up with OD for brief periods of time or claims they are on a break so he can do whatever he wants without being labeled a cheater, only to return once he has had his pleasure. Looking back, OD sees that at least 2 of these breaks occurred during these dating situations. However, OD is the most upset since he has tolerated it for so long and has given Ian numerous opportunities. He says this was the final straw. He's returning to Santa Barbara and leaving Ian and the cold, nasty Midwest behind for good. Despite our exhaustion after the hike, Liv and I had the longest chat. I informed her right away that I was not interested in arguing, disputing, or anything like that. I said, "Tell me everything you want to tell me. I will not interrupt or ask questions until you finish, then I demand the exact same courtesy." She agreed. Her letter was filled with apologies and explanations. She would admit it was wrong, then explain why it was okay or point to a positive conclusion. She expressed her disappointment and hurt with how I behaved at the campsite, but she also realized that Ian deserved equal culpability for poking the bear. When she finished, she asked if I had any questions. I replied, "No." And then I began. I informed her that our entire relationship is based on false pretenses. I can see where you were coming from and why you tried the entire FWB thing. Your 3 best friends did it and scored excellent husbands before you. But on some level, all 4 of you had to understand that starting a relationship like this was wrong. It was tremendously distressing to learn that you were sleeping with someone else while we were getting to know each other, and I believe it impeded the natural progression of our relationship. I added, it has significantly altered my memory of our early days together. Do you remember that fantastic day we had approximately 4 or 4.5 months into our relationship? We spent the day together. It finished with us back on my couch, kissing, your shirt off, and me caressing you over your shorts. It was getting quite hot. You paused and apologized, stating you wanted to but weren't quite ready. You needed to be absolutely certain. I assured you that everything would be fine, and you gazed at me affectionately, kissed me passionately, and then departed. I stopped before saying, "I can only guess you left my place and went to Ian's." As she nodded, tears streamed down her face. I said, "I invested that energy in you. You chose to give it to someone else rather than returning it to me. I might have been able to get over this if it had ended in the 1st or 2nd month, when we were more relaxed. But after that, we spent a lot of time together and you maintained your relationship with him until the day before we became official. You enjoyed having us both. You did whatever mental gymnastics were required to justify it to yourself." I told her, "You may not realize it, but this last portion is the toughest part of it all for me. Learning that you were far more adventurous and exciting with him is like a dagger to the heart. It makes me feel like I'm second best, like I'm the retirement plan you choose, just good enough." She interjected saying, "No, not like that, I love you. He was only having sex, it was not real. That's how it is when they don't matter. It's simpler to be free and wild then." And so on. I waited for her to finish before saying, "Remember, we agreed it was my turn to talk." Afterward I remarked, "I see your point of view, but it is not mine. As your husband, I believe it is my responsibility to give you my full energy, emotional, physical, cerebral, and sensual. I believe I have accomplished this during the past 8 years. I believe you have given me your best in some areas, but I now see I have not received your best in others. And as a male, I have to acknowledge that sensuous energy is really essential to me. The fact that you did not trust me with all of your sensual energy was the determining factor. I do not think I can recover from this, and I want to file for divorce. The scene became chaotic from there. She started crying hard, asking, giving herself and pleading with me to start over. I eventually removed myself from the situation. Later, she mentioned that we were just in an emotional state right now and that I needed to give it some time. This gave me pause, and I agreed to her terms of 3 weeks. As I previously stated, it has been 4 years, and my feelings have been consistent. We met with a joint divorce lawyer, who will represent both of us. There are no children involved and we both want to sell the house, so the initial meeting went smoothly. She has been tremendously depressed, as have I, but this is for the best. Sometimes things simply don't work out. Thank you very much. Brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. Now my family wants me to forgive them, but I told them to fuck off and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so absurd that I need to vent. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 and has always been the golden kid in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism, it was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would be accused. He'd start a fight, and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, he needs more attention, nor, you're the older one, you should know better. Nor, Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own house. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a lavish celebration and purchased him a car to travel in. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to avoid the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped school after 1 semester, citing that college was not for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises over the following few years. Regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. "Oh, you're still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is considering establishing another business. He's very entrepreneurial." Never mind that I was establishing a secure profession while Mike depleted our parents' retirement money. Despite everything, I tried to keep my friendship with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation into a game he could win. If I was promoted, he would suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he would inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends and we clicked immediately. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks, obviously, were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled, and discussed the future. I began to believe that, just maybe, I could have the life I had always desired. A good profession, a loving partner, and perhaps children eventually. I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, simply a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing, we had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times, right? Looking back, I should have seen the indications. Sarah grew distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her companions, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she may be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began acting strangely around 4 months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, came crumbling down. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah attempted to explain, her words coming out quickly between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could provide her with everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her or be in the same room with the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I contacted Mike. I can't recall what I said, it was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming that it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Mike over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Mike that he was no longer my brother and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they didn't have me. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleads. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, as Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. The majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number and begun treatment to deal with all of this. But my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push a reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My father left harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love via this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else, perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has had an impact on all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family. As if I'm terrible for refusing to play happy families with the people who have wounded me the most. The idea of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags, but I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, I guess my question is, am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my brother and ex-fiancé? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this: validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy God, this exploded up overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes, I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive. They have strengthened security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. 5. To those suggesting a DNA test. Sarah acknowledged the affair, and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Mike's. Even if it was mine, I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. To the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse, some of his acts. 9. Those who have inquired about Sarah's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10. To the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday. Honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all. But I'm trying not to make any major decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you updated if anything big happens, but for the time being my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they are making me feel less alone in this. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral, and going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple, given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, some fancy guy in an expensive suit who likely charges more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, however, I swear if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Mike attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike merely scoffed and said this wasn't over, and I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed his words didn't shake me. But at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. When she noticed me, she attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower, but I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employer and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me until I heard his voice. I swung around and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Sarah. That was when I lost it. I swiped at him, my first landing on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like kids again. Except this time there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the larger person and let Mike win. I got in a few nice hits before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shaking from adrenaline, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about how I had broken Mike's nose and that he could require surgery. I couldn't help laughing. The ridiculousness of her being upset with me after what they'd done was simply too much. I apologize if I had upset her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for several months. She began sobbing, complaining about how anxious she was, how the baby could detect her pain, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The aftermath from the brawl was severe. The news had spread like wildfire throughout our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family members, some supporting me, others calling me out for assaulting my poor defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me and their displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem adequate anymore. Mike has demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I'm concerned about what he'll do next. The legal fallout has been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident. Mike apparently filed assault accusations against me. I recounted what had happened, how Mike had violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle considering that I threw the first punch. We are in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to provide police statements, show them injuries on my face and knuckles, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating. Mike and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, whom I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of pressure from her family for supporting me, but she's staying firm. She told me about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently my parents have been telling everyone that I'm experiencing a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I am simply envious and unable to let go. According to Amy, most of the family is skeptical, but some are. It's irritating to know that they're spreading false information about me while I'm attempting to recuperate. Things at work have been, to say the least, difficult. After the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media, I can sense my coworkers are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and realizes I'm going through a difficult period, but then he dropped the bombshell. He believes it would be best if I took a leave of absence until things calm down. He suggested we call it a personal sabbatical. Paid, of course. I wanted to fight, to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made. So I agreed, thanked him for his understanding and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my coworkers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction in watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and giving her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about what's going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they hadn't just destroyed numerous lives to be together. Emma claims Sarah has been attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who would listen about how she never intended to hurt anyone and how she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would prefer not to have. The social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the unwanted spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us to figure it out. The comment area became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking over some of the comments one night after having too many beers. A huge mistake. I ended up hurling my phone across the room so hard that the screen cracked. Since then, I've canceled most of my social media profiles. I can't deal with the continuous notifications and messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain. But at this point, I'd move to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is becoming increasingly intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life, where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My folks have been unusually silent since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots and so on, with a message about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't possibly get any worse, yet it has. I'm still angry and wounded, but also weary. I am tired of justifying myself. So Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of, I'm not sure, a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for right now. Advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother? Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all informed. Your encouragement has meant more to me than you can realize. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when it feels like everything is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update. Hello Reddit. It's been a week since my previous update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their help and guidance throughout this journey. Your writings have been a lifeline in the worst times of my life. So where to start? A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm relocating. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle office. It was not an easy decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a new start. The choice came following an especially difficult day last week. I'd just returned from another meeting with my lawyer regarding Mike's assault allegations when I saw a note in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I almost tossed it out before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten letter stating how pleased she and Mike were about their baby. She went on to say that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them, and that the baby would be delighted to have its uncle in its life. I saw red. Before I realized it, I'd grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring and I simply let go. I informed her exactly how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she believed I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved, to be honest. I believe he was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly, again breaking the restraining order, to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it, that family was everything and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Mike reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties, but he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he attempted to portray himself as the victim. I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor, but I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister, Emma, who had been keeping me updated on Sarah and Mike's situation, as you may recall. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Emma informed me that Sarah had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I'm not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case, which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Mike's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I'm going across the nation should also show that I'm not a threat to Mike, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life rather than obsessing on the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day. I threaten to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't become independent by getting real jobs. Am I the asshole for being too harsh? Hi Reddit. I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have 2 adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, but she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this road. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, They had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, but I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, we remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, they're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, But there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, and I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers. My 12-year-old daughter left me for her rich stepfather. After losing her mother and being kicked out by her stepfather, she returns broke at 22. My ex-wife, then 41, female, and I, then 45, male, split up 12 years ago. She found solace in the company of a wealthy man. Sorry, there's no better way to put it. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother who had little interest in working or earning money. She wanted to stay at home and take care of the house and our daughter. I never forced my daughter to work after she was born, even though my finances were tight. I was working 2 jobs and earning enough money to eat well. However, my salary could not afford the luxury lifestyle she desired. I will not go into detail regarding my relationship with my ex. This piece is about Laura. Details regarding my ex-wife may be covered in another post. When Laura was 10, my ex-wife admitted that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man. She moved out on the same day that we filed for divorce. We became co-parents to Laura. Because I had 2 jobs and she didn't, we decided that I'd have Laura on weekends. I formed a strong bond with Laura. We have some fantastic adventure trips together. Even though the divorce was traumatic, spending time with her made me feel so much better. As time passed, I noticed Laura was delaying our meetings. Previously, every Friday, I looked forward to her email explaining what she planned to do over the weekend. However, the email's substance eventually changed to, "Sorry, I can't make it this weekend. We're going skiing," or, "We have other fancy sports or SL trips with stepfather." I initially ignored this, believing her stepfather was simply trying to keep her happy and that I should not be jealous. I eventually concluded Laura didn't want to see me as regularly. Our weekly meetings became bi-monthly, then monthly, only one day of the weekend. I saw she was not enjoying our time together as much as she used to. When it became clear that she was purposefully avoiding me, I challenged her. I tried to explain that I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, even overextending myself financially. Despite this, she continued to forsake our weekends together. She began lying, claiming she had schoolwork or projects on weekends when in fact, she was going out with her stepfather. Her excuses sounded real at times, but they were mostly made up. Whatever little time we had together, she would always complain about how much better it was going out with her stepfather since he doesn't look at the price tag before ordering anything. Even on trips I accompanied her on, she would prefer to spend time with her stepfather. She began grumbling about tiny inconveniences that previously did not disturb her. But she never stopped talking about the new PlayStation 5 or bike her stepfather gave her, or the expensive stuff her mother purchased. I felt she was too young to grasp that showering someone with material possessions is not love. The problem got worse when she ignored me for almost 3 months. Despite several calls and texts, I received no response. Desperate, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He informed me I could sue my ex-wife for alienating Laura. But Laura was 12 at the time, and my lawyer advised that if she admitted in court that she no longer wanted to spend time with me, it may exacerbate the situation. Laura could say she needed more money to live up to her lifestyle, which could imply increased child support. Yes, I was already paying child support, despite the fact that her wealthy stepfather provided so much for her. I dropped the idea of suing my ex for custody. There was no purpose. My attorney advised we have a formal out-of-court conversation with them. It would help me understand what they wanted. I agreed to go this way, and my lawyer wrote them a letter with extensive allegations. He said that we desired an out-of-court settlement. I had a strange sensation that my ex-wife would refuse to talk since she had enough money and time to burn in a court action. To my astonishment, she agreed to discuss and resolve this matter in front of the attorney. My ex-wife's husband attended the conference, as did my ex-wife and Laura. They both swore they were beyond this and had no idea if Laura was ghosting me. They admitted they had no part to play in it and stood aside, allowing Laura to speak for herself. Laura then delivered the most devastating blow of my life. She demanded that I relinquish my parental rights. That was 10 years ago, yet I still remember the frightening event vividly. I was dead silent for, I'm not sure how long. My lawyer pressed me for a response, but I just stared at everyone. What do I say? When I looked at my ex-wife, her lips twisted into a smile, as if she knew what was going to happen. I took Laura's hand and murmured, "Baby, I hope you understand what you're saying. Giving away my parental rights would mean you could no longer call me dad. You would no longer be my daughter." She shook off my hand, stared straight in my eyes and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." I was astounded. I ran out of words to explain the implications of her decision. My lawyer attempted to explain the legal repercussions, such as property concerns and other issues, but she refused to change her decision. She looked at her stepfather and questioned, "Once he disowns me, you'll be able to adopt me as your daughter, right?" He nodded with wide eyes and replied, "Certainly, darling." Words cannot express the bitterness I felt at that moment. My world was destroyed, to say the least. I lost my sense of purpose in life. After my wife of 15 years cheated on me, Laura was the one bright spot in my life. She was the one I looked forward to after working 2 jobs. I didn't date anyone for 2 years after my divorce. I didn't have the time and didn't want to. I wanted to give Laura my complete love and attention. This is what I received in return. She wanted to get rid of me. My state was so pitiful that I couldn't think clearly. My lawyer borrowed some time to respond to them. I'm sure my ex and her husband slept well that night after seeing me in such a vulnerable position. My lawyer drove me home. After he went, I cried like a baby for hours in my empty house. My heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. I contacted my folks and informed them of Laura's desire. They were completely terrified and hurried over to comfort me. My parents, particularly my mother, were really close to Laura. She had been caring for her for over a year when my wife needed surgery and was forced to stay in bed. During that time, my mother took care of both Laura and my ex-wife. Mom gave it a go, but Laura insisted that I give up my parental rights. She passionately wanted to be her stepfather's daughter. He had informed her that he couldn't adopt her unless I relinquished my parental rights. I asked my lawyer what my choices were. He suggested we could sue them for manipulating Laura, but because she was 12, it would be difficult to show she was being manipulated. Besides, they had the money to pursue a long court action, whereas I did not. Plus, what's the sense of battling when the person I'm fighting for has already decided on their side? It was a lost battle. I had no choice but to swallow the bitter pill and give up my fatherly rights. I spent the next week wrapped up in my bed. I left my second job. Who do I work for now? I lost all motivation to get up in the morning and go to work. I took so many absences from my full-time job and struggled so hard that I was eventually dismissed. I moved to a different town, slept at a subway station, and walked around like a crazy person for days. I gradually got out of it, found a new job, went to the gym and enrolled in treatment. It took me around 2 years to recover. I didn't date, but I did go on a lot of solitary treks as a form of treatment. During one of these visits I met my current wife, Brianna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. After a while of dating, we moved in together. Brianna introduced me to Emma for the first time, and I broke down. She reminded me of Laura. I strongly wanted Emma to address me as Dad, but I held back. I did not want to damage myself again. I had a healthy but distant relationship with Emma. On her 12th birthday, Emma requested me to adopt her. I felt so overwhelmed. I now have 2 kids, Emma and Amy, a 3-year-old toddler, with my second wife. I believe I've provided enough context on my circumstance. Fast forward to a week ago. I was returning from work when I noticed a familiar face smiling at me. As I approached, I saw it was none other than Laura. I felt shivers, as if I had seen a ghost. She was taller, slimmer and much more attractive, but it was easy to recognize her. She ran up to me and hugged me saying, "Dad, I'm your daughter Laura. I finally found you." I gazed at her with lifeless eyes and replied, "I have 2 daughters, but you're not one of them." Before she could say anything, I began walking away. She followed me, but I turned around and yelled, "Quit following me or I'll report you." I did not see her after that. The next day, she arrived at my residence. As soon as I opened the door, she exclaimed, "I apologize, I know you're angry with me but please hear me out. Mom has died and Dad, stepfather, has brought his mistress home. He doesn't love me as much as he did when Mom was living. He's cut me off financially and says I need to start earning my own money. When I pestered him, he threatened to disown me." I listened to her outburst and said with a straight face, "So what?" She began pleading with me for another opportunity. I screamed at her to leave and slammed the door in her face. She then went to my mother and apologized. She was able to persuade my mother with her emotions, and now she wants me to reunite with Laura for the sake of our family. The anguish she caused me is preventing me from reconciling with her. Am I in a *** hole? Update 1. Some of you inquired about my ex-wife, wondering whether she was a gold digger, if she manipulated Laura, or if it was my fault. So here's a quick background on my ex-wife. We dated for 2 years before we married. She worked at a neighborhood bar as a waitress while we were dating. I was a regular there, which is how we first met. She was living with a coworker. I worked 1 full-time job and lived in a studio apartment. That's when I acquired another job, saved more money and purchased a house to accommodate her. We were married, and she quit her work. For the first 6 to 7 years of our marriage, she was pleased and content with my salary. But then she began moaning about how her friends' husbands earned more money. She would even tell me that instead of settling for me, she should have waited longer to find a richer husband. It was offensive, and we would have fights. Of course, I couldn't just stand there and take the obscenities she hurled at me. Eventually, our connection became chilly and distant. One day, she revealed that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man and would be going out to live with him. I didn't beg her to stay, but I did warn her that these wealthy men regard women like her as toys. They play with them and then discard them when they're finished. She said she didn't rush things this time, and she'd been seeing him for 2 years. She trusted him enough to live with him. After that, I didn't have anything to say. I kept quiet and sucked it up. Some of you pointed out that Lara was just 12 when she requested me to disavow her, and that I should have battled for her. You are correct that she was a juvenile when all of this occurred, and I do not deny that she was emotionally and financially misled. When she became 18, she had the option of contacting me, but she chose not to. She's now 22 and is just seeking out since her stepfather cut her off financially. Someone questioned how my ex-wife died. I didn't ask Lara about it, but she informed my mother that her mother died from a serious illness. Lara also had a liver condition and needed surgery as a baby. The problem is that Lara is exploiting my mother's emotions in order to assist her reconcile with me. Instead of discussing it over the phone, I went to see my mother and discovered that Lara had fed her sob stories to win her back. She stated she was homeless, had no employment or money, and had been living on the streets since her stepfather kicked her out. My mother requested I meet her and I accepted for her sake. Mom contacted Lara, and she arrived within an hour. I probed her aggressively and all of the facts came out. It turns out that her mother and stepfather spoiled her so much that she never finished high school. She was too busy vacationing and dining with them to think about schooling or school. I'm not sure what that man was thinking by indulging her in this way. I'm not sure what her mom was thinking when she allowed this to happen. Lara insisted that everything she did and said, including the parental rights issue and the ghosting, was part of her mother's plan to embarrass me. I asked her why her mother would do such a thing. She said it was because I didn't make enough to purchase her mom high-end clothing and accessories, which had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Lara claimed her mother devised the scheme to shame and humiliate me in front of her new husband. Listening to this was really distressing because it brought back all of the traumatic experiences I had worked so hard to forget. I told Lara that the past was done, her mother was gone, so what did she want from me now? She asked me to accept her as my daughter again. When I questioned what would happen after that, she quickly said, "It means I would be your daughter, and you would have my back." I answered, "Okay, I will accept you as my daughter, but all you will get from me is love. I'm planning to give Emma and Amy my property, insurance money and savings. But I shall cherish you as my eldest daughter. Will that work for you?" She froze. After stammering for a time, she responded, "Yeah, we can discuss money later." "You are not going to make a will now, are you?" I said, "Yes, Emma and Amy are already identified as beneficiaries in my insurance and savings accounts. I also bought a house in the new city and gave it to my second wife Brianna. I won't change any of that for you. If you're good with that, bring me the document I signed giving up my parental rights, and I'll have my lawyer prepare a new one to overturn it." She answered, "Yeah, sure," but remained mute for the rest of the conversation. My mother offered her food, but she rejected, citing a pressing matter. 2 weeks have gone and she has yet to turn up. I pointed this out to my mother, adding that it was all about money. Lara backed off after I informed her I wasn't going to give her any. What a useless piece of work she is. Update 2. I warned you it was all about money, and it certainly is. Lara returned to my mother's house 2 weeks ago, despite the fact that we had last spoken 4 months ago. She looked awful, with red puffy eyes covered in dark rings and rashes all over her body, possibly caused by swallowing something she was sensitive to. She was crying and screaming for assistance. She demanded money from my mother. Lara explained that she had been living with a friend since her stepfather disowned her, but that friend had now thrown her out as well. She claimed to have sold the majority of her items to buy food in recent months, but she now had no money or possessions. Mom questioned why she hadn't acquired a job. Lara claimed she dropped out of school and no one would hire her. Mom recommended communicating with a friend who manages a bakery to see if she could get Lara a job as a cleaner or something similar. After all, there are many careers that do not require a high school graduation. Lara remained mute and wailed, asking my mother for money. Mom gave her some packaged meals and $100. She also questioned why Lara had not brought the paperwork to challenge the disownment. Lara stated that it was at her stepfather's place and that she would retrieve it next time. She accepted the money and food, then left. Mom didn't tell me about this visit at first because she assumed I'd be upset with her. 3 days earlier, Lara returned to my mother's house with the same sob story. Mom asked what she did with the money, and Lara responded she spent it on groceries. When Mom inquired about the job, Lara did not provide a direct answer. This time, Mom refused to give her any more money, claiming she didn't have any to spare and no more food. She simply handed her a loaf of bread. As Lara was preparing to leave, Mom inquired whether she had changed her mind about being my daughter. Lara responded, "What is the sense of having him as my father if he isn't going to give me any money? He has given everything to his beggar stepchildren." Mom was taken aback by her statements and chased her out of the house, threatening her not to return. Mom quickly called to tell me about both trips. I did feel upset with her for assisting Lara the first time, and I warned Mom to be cautious while answering the door at night. Based on Mom's description of Lara's appearance, it appears that she is engaged with bad company and may pose a threat to Mom, especially since she is living alone following Dad's death last year. We want to seek a restraining order against Lara in case she returns and causes trouble again. Today I went to my mom's residence. I went outside to see whether Lara was around, but I couldn't find her. I will be staying here for a week. I don't know what to do, but I'm sad about her. If what she said about my ex-wife is correct, my ex went too far in her attempts to disgrace me, destroying her own daughter's life. If Lara is lying about it, she has already paid the price for her nasty behavior. By the way, someone remarked on my previous post that everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions, and Lara wasn't bad for choosing her stepfather over me. She was simply on the wrong side. I suppose that's true. She made a decision 10 years ago, and she has to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. After finding 2 tampons and other clues, I uncovered a disturbing truth behind my husband's secret meetings. Original post: I, 29F, have been with my husband, 30M, for 7 years, married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that, or him, were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention, and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the back seat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning. This time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I've found. What should I do? Relevant comments. I've had a period of 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and get cameras. Neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. Has Fiona been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? She's been to our house many times and vice versa. To my knowledge, she wasn't over any time in the past week, so if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Anytime she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to go really out of your way to make it to our bedroom, that is around our dogs, over the safety gate, past the other bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. How old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? 2 and almost 4. Both have a mischievous streak, so I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they'd get their hands on 1, possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. Update post. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the back seat one I had already discarded. And they were a match, just in different absorbances. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either fucking my husband, fucking with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for any misplaced foreign items, there were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said, it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2yo, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, IMO. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for, or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered. And kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again, if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a 3rd time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. Relevant comments. To answer a couple questions. My 2yo can only string together a couple words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy or her clothes bow, she answers based on the cues I give her, for example, who gave you that pretty bow? And she repeats pretty bow back to me, or mama daddy, over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. I have a 45 minutes commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notifs on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. LOL edit. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. Is it possible one of the hair clips came from daycare? I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion. LOL. People comment that they can't wait to find out the ending to this saga. My money's on the Hollywood horror ending. Hopefully dreamed up the dogs too so I can finally stop picking up their imaginary shits and whatnot. Final update post. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating or caring for my kids the way I should have been. And I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my BL agreeing to help with the install setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A Ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband was at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what the fuck this woman was doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the Ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict, who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had molested them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all and still, somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently my Sil, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know or, worse, try to keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in secret, often at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage, in my husband's car, so the Ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised in his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head. The tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist. Shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression, 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years later, I told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer from PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this mindfuck, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation. And a lot of anger. Am I the asshole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? Original post, August 18, 2024. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18 and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see. And instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair, and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness. And how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, the best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers, my uncles, said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA with a few YTAs. Relevant comments. Comment 1. It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further. OOP. Yeah, afterwards it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it, LOL. Comment 2. He sounds like a gentle, kind and well-meaning person. You directed what is very clearly anger and resentment for your mother at him. It's a bit more complicated than being an asshole or not. You seem to have got some catharsis out of it. I just don't believe he is the one you really wanted to scream at, and from the sounds of it he was also a victim of your mother too. And while he was an adult and should have known better, he obviously didn't. Being non-confrontational isn't some character flaw. It's psychological. And he probably needs therapy himself. Screaming at him and demeaning him actually sounds like something your mother probably did/would do. And I worry about you if that is something that actually made you feel better about yourself. OOP. Yes, I fully admit he was a victim of my mother, but he was a victim who had a support system he never wanted to use. He fully let me be a victim my entire childhood because apparently it was too much effort to try, and to this day doesn't believe he needs therapy. Comment 3. All I can say is based on your post and this interaction is deeply misguided. And you're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the mother you actually should hate. OOP. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well, but she is gone, and there is no use in holding a grudge against a dead person. I had hoped though, after his son making him an outsider in his life, his family openly joking face to face about his failings as a father, and his ex-wife draining him for everything he had and making him start over in a one-bedroom apartment, his friends slowly leaving his life one at a time out of embarrassment, that he would have maybe have at least one moment to reflect and maybe consider he should have done things differently. OOP getting therapy due to his past trauma. OOP. Yeah, either way, I need to hop back on the horse for therapy. It'll be good for me. As for my grandparents, I really have had to look back as to how far this pattern of enabling goes back. I know they all did what they could to try and help, but it always seemed like there were times that more active measures could be taken. Times where people should have been far more stern with his addressing his behavior. The older generation on his side are the classical "their family and we stick together no matter what." And I have to think whether his passiveness and enabling is something he picked up on his own or something he learned from his own parents. Update 1. August 20th, 2024, 2 days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the YTA. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world, because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her, don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So those parts are fine. Looked kind of like an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freakout resulted in my grandmother having a mini freakout of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret about my father's failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really liked it for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in then telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public bitching moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. Comments. Comment 1. This is an interesting one. The ability to control one's failures, yes, that's what I'll call your situation, is very powerful. You'll do all right. Comment 2. Congratulations sincerely on owning your actions. No matter how justified, you acknowledged your outburst was uncomfortable for others and likely not appropriate in that setting. It takes incredible strength of character to admit your failings even if you have no idea how else you could have reacted in that moment. That you immediately communicated that to your loved ones is a huge sign of how respectable and genuine you are as a person. I really hope you keep moving forward from this situation with the same mindset. Good luck. Comment 3, NTA. It sounds like you handled things well after what happened. You took responsibility by apologizing to your girlfriend and family, and it's clear you're committed to moving forward by focusing on therapy and healing. It's understandable that you snapped given everything you've been through. It's also clear that your outburst made your family realize the impact your dad's behavior had on you. Don't beat yourself up over it. You've done what you needed to do to move on, and it seems like you're on the right track now. Update 2, September 12, 2024. 3 weeks later. Things have progressed over the last couple weeks and I now have a broader context about my family. Long story short is, there was a lot hidden from me. My father was an absolute asshole to his family, and that's why they treat him the way they do. I got a lot of feedback including the compilation posts on Best of Redditor updates and Boru, and one thing that stood out was people questioning if my extended family could have contributed to the abuse and that's why he was so feeble. And since I was trying to work on my relationship with my family, I figured it was time to ask the hard questions before going that far. I met with my dad's brothers who invited me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity. Dale is the oldest brother. He is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest, self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son. Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So anyways, we met up and I ripped the band-aid off asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I know, and what really is going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and basically summed up that besides what I know, there is a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never told me about simply because it was never the time nor the place to. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young, a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, had a close-knit relationship with his brothers, and meeting my mom in high school junior year made everything go downhill. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his 2 younger brothers and was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him and he even became a little bit of a golden child, but no one minded. The reason his family doesn't respect him is what happened to his behavior when my mother got attached to him. It first started simple. My mother acted rude and distant to the family. They weren't huge fans, but my father loved her so they tolerated it. She became possessive and slowly isolated my father and convinced him to give up his ambitions and goals. The family became concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him and convince him to leave. My father didn't budge and began to lash out. When I was born, my extended family tried to talk to my father about my mother's attitude. My father was angry and threatened to report them for harassment. He was in denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was having fertility issues, my mother messaged her appalling and cruel things. When Dale was pissed and went to talk to my father, he told Dale to drop it and even justified it. Dale punched him and the police almost got involved. Dale hated him going forwards. John grew to hate him when my mother insulted his son due to mild physical disabilities. My father cracked a joke about what she said. John hated him then. Finally, Bill, who always idolized my father, tried to inform my father that my mother made a pass at him and urged divorce. My father responded with a maddening call of utter hate and relationship-ending words. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to repeat her attitude. When they showed signs of abuse to me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie, to accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers and could make their lives hell if they tried, and my father would gladly let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like the grandparents, great and uncles and such, believe in the traditional mindset of family sticking together no matter what, while the generations further down want to keep a distance from him. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more. They told me out. It was all essentially that my father died on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationship with his brothers in the process. And when she died and destroyed him, he probably had to realize it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem to not want to accept the fact that he was lost, or maybe they hope he can fix his life. Who knows? This was a lot to process and was only confirmed by my father himself when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true. He said yes. I would have agreed to maybe some family therapy, but now I have no idea. My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27, and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well, until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, My mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So, with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on, with or without the support of my family. Years have passed and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancée met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer and she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one other a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth. But he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house, but they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave. But I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring. In the settlement, she had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth, so my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete, as my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago. This was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door as she began to sob uncontrollably. I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study, so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since, apparently, a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself. But I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her. In case you were asking, yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine right now. It's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy. But nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, my parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for an honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner so that we may settle our disagreements civilly before the wedding. It was bold of them to think that I would want them at my wedding in the first place. We got a good laugh at their dumb message. After that, I wrote back, indicating I had no interest in anything they had asked us to. I was content living away from them, as I had for the previous 7 years. They had shown me that I was better off without them, and I would be eternally grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their supposed forgiveness. They may continue to play happy family with my sister as they had done so far. With that last text, I blocked them for good since I no longer wanted the chuckles. I was done, and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll try to contact me in some way soon, but unfortunately for them, I'm done with it. Liza is the only family I need for now, and I'm content with just her. Unfortunately, my dad and sister have never been able to think beyond themselves, and I doubt they ever will. So the next time they contact me, they will speak with my lawyer, and that is a commitment.